Good morning, family. And that's exactly what you are to me. You are my family. Very good job, Bradley. Very inspirational. Thank you. Most of you know that I was raised Catholic. In fact, when I say I was raised Catholic, the nuns ensured that I was Catholic on steroids. To the point where I actually spent 2.5 years as a Benedictine oblate. They found me wandering around the garden and in the woods once too often when I should have been at chapel. So we decided to part ways. Never in my life did I ever envision that I would ever be anything but Catholic. It was that so deeply ingrained in me, I couldn't ever envision me parting with the church. However, the church decided to part with me, just the way the convent did, when I married my husband, and it was for him a second marriage, and so the doors of Rome closed. That it left a vacuum in my life is to say the least. For a very brief time, I was a bit adrift and a bit of an agnostic. But the fact of the matter is that the taproot of my spirituality has always penetrated into the very heart of the Good Mother. And so, more than ever, I turned to nature, and I found in nature the sustenance that I needed for my soul to grow. I knew, of course, that my background was among the indigenous people. I knew very little about it, but I had sensed it. It wasn't talked about, but I had sensed it from earliest childhood. And to the consternation of my grandmother, would repeatedly say, "But Grandma, I'm Indian." This was never actually confirmed by her, since it was something you didn't talk about. As time went on, I turned more and more toward the philosophy and the spirituality of the native people. I had always been aware of the all-pervasive presence of the great mystery as it penetrated and manifested itself in every aspect of creation. Every mountain, every hill, every river, every blade of grass, every four-legged creature, and those with wings, and even those that crawled. I sensed that presence as tangible as my own breath. I heard the unmistakable voice of the Great Spirit in every wind that blew. I never ever experienced loneliness because of that intrinsic awareness of the Great Spirit, great mystery. But I did not have an affiliation, and so I walked a very solitary spiritual path. About 1.5 years after my husband died, and this is where I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to understand, or to at least set aside your analytical Western way of thinking, and to try for a little while to come into my world and into the way of thinking that is that of the nature-based indigenous peoples of the world. Ours is not a faith that needs logic or explanation or even definition. It's a deeply personal experience. We are open to the world of dreams, in the world of vision. We need no proof of what it is that we have experienced. And so when the dreams began, I didn't question. I accepted. Now, when I say dreams, I'm not talking about those little fritillaria type of dreams that disappear at dawn. I'm talking about experiences that are perhaps even more vivid and tangible in their reality than anything that happens in our waking hours. They began slowly at first. For the most part, the messages that were being conveyed to me through those dreams and the knowledge was done through totem animals. Now, I know most of you think in terms of, well, if you think at all of that, you might think in vision of angels. Totem animals have always been, for my people, the messengers of the great mystery. So we don't think that it would be unusual to be addressed in dream by the great bear, and to awaken one morning feeling the weight of that paw in my hand, imprinted on my hand as surely as my own fingerprints, and knowing that in that dream I was being summoned to become a member of the clan of the Great Bear. But again, it was a solitary walk. As I started to say, shortly after my husband died, I went to Prairie Fest. I was walking around pretty much by myself when I spotted the teepee that was almost always there at Prairie Fest at the far end of the campus grounds. And of course I was drawn to it. I stood in the doorway looking in. I could see what I knew was a white man in buckskins, not an Indian, who called himself, I later found out, Dirty Kettle. He was doing beadwork. But the interior of the teepee was dark and I couldn't see further than that. And all of a sudden there was a voice from the interior of that teepee who said, Dirty Kettle, send her in, she's one of us. Dirty Kettle kind of looked at me and shook his head I should come in, and I'm like looking around to see if there was somebody else behind me. There wasn't. So trepidatiously I entered and was motioned toward the back, where there was an indigenous person sitting who turned out to be an elder of the Penobscot tribe. He motioned me to sit down, and I sat. He looked at me for a while and he said, You're a storyteller. And I said, Well, no, not exactly. I'm a columnist. No, he said, You're a storyteller. You are intended to be our storyteller. And he told me that we're having a powwow of sorts at Ashippun a couple of months later, and he told me I was supposed to be there. Well, I left in a rather confused state of mind, but when that date came, I had somebody take me to Ashippun, and there was a group of teepees set up, and when I came, they ushered me back into the same teepee that had been at Prairie Fest. You understand, at this time, I had no clothing that would have distinguished me as a Native American, and I didn't have any idea of what kind of stories I was supposed to be telling. I thought maybe they'd hand me a book or something. They didn't. So the children started to come in, and they arranged themselves around me, and I sat there. And then, from somewhere deep within my genetic memory, the stories began. Even my voice was different. It was as though sitting there in that teepee, I had become my ancestor. And I did that for 2 days. And what amazed me was that at no time did these children, even the youngest children, ever squirm or ever create any kind of a disturbance. I seem to have somehow found the ability to keep them mesmerized. Well, time went on and I began to do more and more of the storytelling at different functions, acquired more of a native appearance in my clothing, perhaps perfected my skills a bit. And then at Juneteenth, about 3 years ago, a lady approached me and asked me if I would come to the Kettle Moraines, where she had an encampment in her home, and would I do storytelling? And I was very happy to agree. So I went, and her house was on a hill overlooking a valley, and I was standing on the porch watching them build the fire down below when a car pulled up. Now here again, I'm asking you to not struggle to find logical explanations. They aren't necessary. The experience stands on its own merits. A person of native descent got out of the car. He approached me carrying in his hand a buckskin wrapped package, which he handed to me. He said, "I brought you a gift. This is white sage." For those of you who don't know, white sage is one of our 4 sacred plants. And it's from Wounded Knee. And for those of you who may not know, Wounded Knee is our most sacred site. He said, "I was present at Wounded Knee when they brought the drum that was to be dedicated, that had been drummed upon by every drumming circle in the continental United States. And it was to be dedicated," and he said, "it fell on me to bring the 4 bear skulls that were to be placed in the 4 different directions at this consecration of this drum." But he said, as I was leaving, an elder approached me, and he told me that he had a special prayer that he wanted to give me. But then he added, "The prayer is not for you." He said, "You will know who this prayer is meant for when you encounter them. You will be given a sign." So he said, I memorized the prayer in the Lakota language. And he said, "I've taken it with me everywhere I've gone. I feel now intuitively that perhaps this prayer was intended for you." Now we're stretching our logical minds here a bit, okay? The elder certainly didn't know me, had never heard of me and never seen me, at least not on this plane. And so, when the people had left after I did the storytelling, this person rose and began the prayer in the Lakota language. And this is where I want to emphasize to you that the night was as clear as a bell. There was no wind. It was perfectly still. And as he intoned that prayer, a vivid flash of lightning jagged across the northern sky. When he finished the prayer, he turned and said to me, "Did you see the light?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then I've been given the sign that it was you for whom this prayer was intended. And you are now a sacred storyteller for our people." This takes a great deal of processing when it happens to you, because regardless of how much you may embrace the way of the first people, there's always that aspect of yourself that has been educated in the Western thought processes. But as time progressed, I accepted this occurrence for what it was, which was almost a mission. I began to tell the stories as I had, the spiritual legends of the peoples, but then something else began to occur. It came to me that I was not intended to just tell those spiritually elevating stories. There was another story that I was being asked to tell. A story a lot of people did not want to hear. A story that had been marginalized and all but eliminated from the consciousness of the Western peoples. Story of the American genocide. And I've been asked, why do you tell this story? Why can't we just let bygones be bygones? That's all in the past. Standing Rock has proven to us it is not in the past. And I had an answer for that after deep soul searching. And it has come to me that the reason that I am telling this story is to open the hearts of my listeners in such a way that they will experience the wound of my people as intrinsically and as tangibly as if it were happening to them. Because it is only in experiencing that wound that the seeds of empathy will be able to germinate and to grow into a way of binding the whole of humanity, so that what we suffer, you have suffered, and together we will be one people. As I have done so much in my life, I did not come with an intention of one day I'm going to be a Unitarian, any more than I decided one day I was going to leave the Catholic Church. It just happened. But I'm here. And I am here because I have found a welcoming group of people who, while they are times that they probably diverge from my particular worldview, are nevertheless willing to accept me with all of my idiosyncrasies. And I have therefore now a group of people so that I no longer walk that spiritual journey alone. And for that, I will forever be grateful.
Thank you, Margaret.